Hello, my name is Dr. Briana Stenard. I am an assistant professor of management and entrepreneurship here at Mercer University. I'd like to welcome you to our professional development series. We have a really exciting panel for you today. We have a group from Douglas County, including the leader of the Douglas County Chamber, as well as some local small business owners to talk about the impacts of COVID-19 on small businesses. I'd like to start out by introducing our panel. First, we have Sarah Ray. She is the president and CEO of the Douglas County Chamber. Thank you for being here, Sarah. We also have Howard Ray. He is the president of HRC Engineers, Surveyors, and Landscape Architects. Thank you, Howard. And Susan Henderson. She is the owner of the Farmers Table. Thank you for being here, Susan. Thank you all for being here. I really appreciate you participating in this panel and sharing your wisdom. Thank you to our attendees for being here and listening. The way it's going to work is we are going to talk for about 45 minutes with the panelists, and then at the end we will open it up for questions. So throughout you can be writing into the Q&A as you see fit, and then at the end we will get to those questions. So please be sending those. And then what we're going to do is we're going to start off with Sarah so she can give us the overview from the county level. So she can give us that perspective from their small business members. We will then move to Susan and Howard to talk about the real life issues that they've had as small business owners. So let's go ahead and get started. Sarah, is Sarah still here? Oh, there we go. Hey, Sarah. So I'd love it if you could start off talking to us about how the Chamber of Commerce in Douglas has been impacted by COVID-19.
Can y'all hear me?
We can.
Okay, sorry, I was just making sure. It kept telling me I was muted. Well, hey, Brianna, thanks for letting me join today, and I apologize that I am in the car driving back from vacation. But a couple of things, just so that everybody knows. I don't know if everybody knows what a Chamber of Commerce does, but we basically are a nonprofit membership organization, and we exist to support and promote and attract businesses for the advancement of our community. And we do that in a ton of different ways. So we do that through seminars and networking events, allowing people to meet and grow their business through relationships. We also do a handful of leads generation groups. We work with colleges and universities like Mercer to provide training to large employers and small businesses alike. And then we even have some more specific programming that's just for startups and entrepreneurs, as well as things that are more pertinent for large companies. So we have about 650 businesses that are members of the Chamber, and that's everybody from large companies like Georgia Power, Greystone, AT&T, all the way down to home-based and micro businesses that might even just operate out of their own home. So that's a little bit about what a chamber does. And, it's kind of crazy. I guess during the pandemic, a lot of people wouldn't think that it would impact the chamber. But honestly, it's impacted us significantly, but in a good way, I guess, in the long run. So we are solely reliant, I would say predominantly on face-to-face events, whether it's seminars, trainings, any of the things that I mentioned. So when you have a quarantine put in place and you can't network with people, and even if you could, you have all these social distancing guidelines that are in place, that makes it pretty near impossible to do that. So we actually very quickly, we had been talking about putting some virtual platforms in place, and I would say that COVID, if it did anything, it just encouraged us to speed up the process a little bit. So very quickly. So we were very swift to shift focus, and we actually have about 5 weekly virtual events that we have going on now, and it kind of touches on a little bit of everything. So we have networking events or roundtables that are specific to small businesses and nonprofits. We have a leads generation group that meets every Tuesday. We do webinars such as these every Wednesday. And then we even have some live programming that we do on Facebook and YouTube and LinkedIn on Mondays that is more current event focused, but we also do a lot of kind of what we're doing here today and talking to different businesses about ways that they've pivoted their business. So we also have been very busy the last couple of weeks. We serve as the advocacy arm for businesses in our community, and I'm sure you guys have all been very familiar with hate crimes legislation that has been discussed the last 2 weeks. And so we help advocate for businesses on behalf of different issues. One being the hate crimes legislation. So a lot of people don't know that the chambers do that, but we work with our legislators on a local, state, and federal level to help ensure that our businesses have the resources and the support that they need. So that's pretty high level of what we've been doing. We've also use this as an opportunity to innovate. And I know we're going to talk about that a little bit later today, and form some partnerships, which is personally my favorite part of, going through this pandemic is seeing businesses truly pivot their business model in a wonderful way. So we actually partnered with the Economic Development Authority to orchestrate a relief fund. And what that relief fund was focused on was supporting our local restaurants, as well as our frontline healthcare workers. So between local businesses, as well as donations from, just people in our community, and it was everything from $5 to $5,000. We were able to raise $50,000. And with that $50,000, what we did is we utilized our local restaurants to pay for meals to feed our healthcare workers at Wellstar Hospital. So even restaurants like Susan from the Farmer's Table were able to, we were able to kind of support them with a little bit extra cash flow, give their employees something to do, so that they were able to be employed and help our community in an area that needed it a lot. So it was a great partnership. We worked a lot, with other businesses as well regarding support for things like financial assistance. We worked really closely with the Development Authority on navigating workforce needs. So, I felt like there's been a lot of love going on in our community lately, and I'm happy to be a part of it.
That's amazing that you guys have been so active in supporting local businesses in your area. I know that you've been doing a lot of talks with small businesses. Have you seen some common themes from your small business owners in Douglas? Have you seen some themes that have come up?
Yeah, it was kind of phased, I would say, as far as their response. Initially, I feel like everybody was in the same world where everybody was kind of panicked and, like, what do I do? I literally had phone calls of people asking me if they need to close their doors, like right away, not for forever, but just for during quarantine. I had people calling me trying to defend why they should be considered an essential business, even though I don't really have control over that. But so it went from this sheer panic to kind of, adapting to the current situation that we were all facing. And then now, luckily, we're in a phase of reopening and recovery. So it's been a lot. I was telling somebody just the other day, the conversations that I've had with hundreds of businesses over the last 3 months are conversations that I never thought I'd have as a chamber executive. But thankfully, we've been able to work with a lot of different organizations to make sure and get them the support that they need.
That's great. And then along those lines, you've already mentioned some, but is there anything that Douglas County is specifically doing for small businesses that you'd like to tell people about?
Yeah, so we are working on a couple of different initiatives that we're getting ready to launch here in the next couple of weeks. One of those being, and I don't even think I told you this one, Briana, we're working on a small business relief fund, and that relief fund will actually be a grant process that we're going to open up to small businesses in Douglas that fit certain criteria, and they'll be gifted with a grant as long as they fill out the application and do all of the different steps to apply. Then we're going to be granting them with money, and that's all still in the works, but we should have the information on that out sometime in July. And then we're also in the process of doing a recovery and resilience task force that's going to basically help our businesses navigate these next 12 to 18 months. And that could be going back into quarantine, hopefully not, but, and how that looks, but also setting them up with the framework to be in a better position going forward. So a lot of strategic planning that we're going to offer, and honestly encouraging businesses to look at their business plans so that if something like this ever happens before, it's more proactive versus reactive.
Thank you. And you mentioned before when we've talked that you guys have a lot of resources available right now on your website, which we have up on the screen, and that normally those would be exclusively for members. Right now it's open, so we encourage people to take advantage of the resources that the chambers are offering.
Absolutely, yeah. So we are typically a membership organization, meaning all of our services are only for our members. But during this time, we are open to help any and all businesses. So you can visit our website, douglascountygeorgia.com, hop on one of our virtual events. You can always follow us on our social media platforms. Obviously, that's not restricted just to members. And just reach out to us. My contact information. We'll make sure and get that to everybody. And we're happy to help anybody in any way that we can.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Sure.
Okay, well, now we are going to move to our small business owners. So thank you, Susan and Howard, for being here. So I'd love it if you'd start off just telling us about your business. So what do you do? How long have you been in business, etc.? So I guess, Howard, we will start with you.
Okay, thank you, Miss Briana. My name is Howard Ray. I'm the president and owner of HRC Engineers, Surveyors, and Landscape Architects. We've been in Douglasville operating for just over 20 years. We bought an existing firm that had been in Douglasville for about 15 years. So we're downtown, right beside Ace Hardware. We primarily do site development engineering and municipal and infrastructure engineering. But, you know, we are work throughout the country, primarily in the Southeast, but we do a lot of work nationally for some national clients. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
My name is Susan Henderson. Thank you so much for having me today. We have a kind of very diverse. We have a market, we have a cafe, we have a gift shop, we have a sweet shop. We've been in Douglas County for about 9 years. It'll be 9 years in August. And we have grown throughout those years. We've done about 3 different renovations throughout that process. And we're just very thankful to be in our county and serve our community. They're a very wonderful support system.
Thank you, Susan. Yes, if you're ever in Douglasville, you need to go visit. They have the best cake ever. Thank you for being with us. Okay, next I want to move into kind of some general, and we'll go into specifics later, but some general of how COVID-19 has impacted your business. So Howard, if you wouldn't mind getting us started.
Yeah, thank you. You know, I think the biggest thing that we tried to address with our staff right out of the gate was just having some honest conversations as a staff, the entire team, was, you know, to address their anxiety. I think there was a lot of unknown and a lot of anxiousness about what was going to happen, you know, even from where we considered essential. Obviously, we're in construction and development. So, you know, was everything going to shut down? So one of the first things we did in early to mid-March was gather the entire staff and just have an honest conversation of where people's comfort level was. We had already started in motion, you know, trying to get the software, hardware capabilities to go totally remote. By the end of, I think, March 15th week, we were entirely working from home. Then we have a staff that works in the field. And so the ones that were in the field on the construction sites, we separated them into individual vehicles so that we could try to practice the social distancing as much as possible. We reached out to our clients to figure out, you know, are they still working? You know, making sure that we were supporting what they needed. So that was the first thing. I think the most important was just have an honest conversation of where we were and letting them know that we did have a plan. Plan was going to have to be flexible, but we wanted everybody's input. You know, from there, we took our staff and we split them into 4 separate teams. One of the things we did that I think is a little unique is that when we split them apart, we didn't just do it by departments. So we sort of spread it out in that we had designers, engineers, and landscape architects, as well as admin staff on teams together. And then we implemented some huddles, so to speak, so team meetings. So every morning, the entire staff got together on a phone call. We sort of had a high-level discussion, and then each team had another call in their individual huddles around lunch, and then at the end of the day. So one of the things that actually came out of it that I think was very positive is we actually, I think, did a better job of communicating. As some of you may know that work in an office environment, it's easy to sit in your office and not walk around through the other cubicles and talk with staff to make sure they have an answer, make sure they have a question. A lot of times we as human beings don't want to ask the question, which we'll just make a decision and move. So this gave a platform for each individual, to quickly be able to say, hey, while I got you, while we're all not in production, let's ask that question. So I think that was one of the most beneficial things we did.
And I love that. And especially, something we teach, right, in change management, one of the biggest things is communication, right? When people are particularly anxious about changes that are happening, that communication is key. So I love that you guys really did that at HRC. So great. Thank you. Okay, Susan, how about you guys? How have you guys been impacted? I know there's been some big changes there.
Yeah, I think it's almost the question is how were we not impacted? It took us by surprise. It took me by surprise. I did not think this was going to be as big as it was. And even talking to some people, I thought, oh, it's going to blow over in a couple of weeks. Just give us 2 weeks and we'll be wondering what the panic was. And unfortunately, it wasn't a 2-week thing.
Right.
We literally went home one day and the next day came back and our whole business had changed. So we were really thankful for the diversity of our products because there were areas that completely fell away. Really, people weren't using the cafe portion of our business. They weren't using the sweet shop portion of our business. They weren't looking for gifts for anybody. So it was all about food. So everything that we were about was about food. And then we quickly learned, well, what foods was it that they needed? And we pride ourselves on making a lot of home cooked meals. So people just have to go home at night, stick it in the oven, and voila, there's their dinner. Well, everything we knew about what we were doing changed. One of our meals, we looked back at the numbers in March, and really COVID happened. The big shift happened in mid-March. So it was really interesting to see. We did I think we did 70 some meals the first 2 weeks of March. And that same meal, the last 2 weeks of March, we did 350. Oh, that's why we're tired. We didn't know. In the morning, we'd make a double batch thinking, okay, that should get us through the day. And by 3 o'clock, we'd look and go, oh, what happened to them?
Wow.
Not only that, not only was it just the workload itself, but the business model had changed. So whereas before we had people that would come in and shop, now everything was online. Everything was through the telephone. We had deliveries, we had curbside, and we didn't really have any of that before. So overnight, we had to create that and go, okay, people can't get out of their house. So how do we bring our store to them? So very quickly, we had to determine what that was. We had to take some clunky technology that we would never have used in normal times. Oh no, that's too clunky. We can't do that to our customers. You know what? They'll be okay with it. They're going to be fine because they can just do it from the comfort of their home, no matter how clunky it is. And they did. They were very, very good about adapting to what we had to offer, and it worked out for us. I think the other big challenge for us was not only just figuring out how much to do and how to do it, but we had to do it with less people. At the end of the day, about a third of our staff left because they were uncomfortable with working in the public. And there was no way we were going to say, no, you have to come to work. No way we were going to say that. If you don't feel comfortable, you stay home and we'll muddle through it. And for us, it was the challenge of, do we hire? Do we just muddle through it? How long is this going to last? So the uncertainty of the length of this pandemic and how much it impacted us was truly a struggle in terms of personnel.
Right. Well, on that point, so what did you do about employment as far as, and I'll ask Howard, I'll ask a similar question, the number of employees you had before, the number of employees you have now, how has that changed? Susan, I'll start with you on that one, since we were just talking about employment.
I think for us, as people left, like every day, 1 to 2 people would leave. And in my mind, right at the beginning, I thought, okay, we'll give it a week. We'll give it 2 weeks. After a week into it, I thought, oh, we can't do this. We can't do the work that we're doing, plus with less staff. So we did put out some feelers. We did bring in some people, but we had to be real careful because then a lot of people were out of a job and they just wanted a job for a couple of weeks.
Right.
We even got to the point where, okay, if you can just work for a couple of weeks, come on. We'll have you for a couple of weeks. Maybe by that time, our employees will come back. I would say that we were truly blessed in the fact that we had 2 people find us that are going to be permanent members of our team.
Right.
And they are so overskilled for what we have, but they were looking for something different, and we had something to offer them that they really connected with. So it's been a blessing for us at the end of the day. But we probably hired a total of 6 people, and 3 of them are still with us. And the other 3 went back to what they were doing before. And then our normal staff has come back.
Yeah, it's crazy right now with the number of people who are out of work, and then also the challenges of hiring on the other side, right, with some unemployment benefits, things like that. There's a lot of going on in employment.
Yes, and very sad stories, right? I mean, all of a sudden, the whole family, neither parent has income coming in. So it was nice to be able to help in those situations.
That's great. I mean, that you guys were able to still stay in business so well that you were still needing to hire. I mean, that's fantastic.
Absolutely.
Actually.
We had way much overtime.
Howard, has this affected your employment?
No, ma'am. You know, we were lucky in that the majority of our work that we do, you know, is for developments or municipal governments, and the money had already been allocated, and a lot of the money, you know, was already being spent and borrowed, probably the proper way to say it. So those kept moving forward. You know, my big concern is really, what does the fall look like? What does spring look like? You know, for right now, we've stayed steady around that 27, 28 people. We actually brought in 3 interns for the summer, which at first we weren't sure if we were going to be able to have them. You know, it was, you know, where they're going to live, you know, and so forth. You know, how comfortable is mom and dad sending their, you know, college kid to live in a different state and so forth. But we were able to work those things out. But I think my big concern is the impacts to the financial sector, to the governments, and you know, is there some sort of drawback in projects that might be starting in construction in the spring, typically would be designed in the fall? You know, is there a pause and finishing of the projects that are ongoing, but a pause to see what happens in the fall? Now, what I will tell you, we talked with 3 of the national builders, and in early, probably mid-April, we talked with all 3 of the national builders. 2 of them didn't slow down at all. One did put a pause on some of their pre-design acquisitions, and as far as the very beginnings of a project. But by mid-May, they were back full steam. So the builders, we're hearing so far from a national level, are not smelling a slowdown. You know, I think there'll be some ripples here and there, but for the most part, we've been very lucky. You know, it probably has stunted our growth. We were in a process of, we were trying to add 2 to 3 people permanent every 6 months. We've been doing that for about 4 years now. And so right now I'm sort of more, we did just add actually 2 that start in July, but that's probably it for a while until I can really get a feeling of what the fall looks like.
Right, with so many changes going on, especially with government contracts and things like that, trying to figure out what the future is going to look like when fall is still so uncertain. Yeah, it's interesting, some of these kind of the industry differences, right, from your industry and then to Susan's, right? Susan, have you guys seen any kind of inventory impacts?
Well, at the beginning, because we don't have any technology, so it's all, you know, eyes on the shelf, it was really difficult to keep up with inventory. And then obviously, as the pandemic went on and things became more apparent of what people wanted, you couldn't source that. So any of your sanitizer, any of your,
Right.
because we work with food, a little bit we struggled just getting gloves. What we didn't struggle with was getting toilet paper. We didn't sell toilet paper before. We sell toilet paper now. So, you know, some of the products change of what you will buy to serve your customers. So those were some of the things. And it was just hard, you know, what you would, you know, you kind of doubled your inventory on certain things thinking, okay, that's going to get us to a certain point, but then it didn't. And then our suppliers, like a lot of our food suppliers, also service restaurants. Well, because restaurants didn't have the business anymore, then they stopped serving our area as frequently. So then we had to adjust on, okay, so now we got to figure out where we used to get supplies 5 days a week. Now we can only get it 1 day a week. And it was difficult to switch to that. And sometimes we'd be on the road hunting product. Okay, where do we go for this? Where do we go for that? But you do what you got to do and you make it work. And you use your partners to the extent that you can. We even called some of our restaurants, hey, do you have this supply? Do you have this supply? Because they would want to get it off their hands, especially if it's a perishable. It's a cost to them. So if it was something that we could use, let's see if we can use it.
Nice, thank you. You've both already kind of mentioned these things in your openers, but I'd like you to elaborate a little more about some of the pivots and adaptations and innovations you did during this time. Howard, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing was to get more working remote. We did come back in the office in June, but we're doing kind of a hybrid. We basically took our teams and everybody works from home on Friday remotely. And then they also have another day of the week, typically, or Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday, that they're also off. So basically they're working from home 2 days a week. Everybody's in the office on Wednesday so we can do our staff meetings and our collaboration. I mean, obviously with what we do, there's a lot of brainstorming and feeding off of each other, which we've done well using the technology. Because of a lot of the projects we do across the nation, working with other vendors that are not from Georgia, you know, we've used some of the technological advances. Well, whereas you're looking at drawings, but not so much like a Zoom meeting where you're actually seeing people. You know, so we've incorporated that. But I think the big thing is, you know, unlike myself and the people my age, you know, the younger generations, they grew up with an iPad, with an iPhone all their life, or whatever the Microsoft products are, in case you don't know which one I rep. You know, but basically they know that they're comfortable with it. You know, they're good with it. So we're trying to continue to grow that model so that we can use that as a recruiting tool. You know, we want to be able to say to people, and you think about it, you know, I think back to the days when I first started in my career. You know, I was in Chicago. I worked 27 miles away, and I sat 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the afternoon going to work and back. You know, well, I've probably been more than willing to say I'll work 2 hours longer for the owner, you know, to not have to do that. I still just gained 2 hours. Now, I'm not saying that you ask for more hours, but my point is, I think the younger generation is cognizant of their time, and that it's not all about money, that's not all about working, that it's more of a communal thought process. And I think this is another lever we can pull to bring and access talent into our company.
Yeah, I mean, this has been a giant experiment, right? In virtual learning and working, right? A lot of, we'd always thought we had to do in person, and now this has kind of been like, well, actually you can do it. And actually a lot of companies have found they're actually at least same level of productivity. There wasn't the huge loss of productivity that companies were expecting. So I think it's actually been a pretty cool experiment, and it's definitely going to change how we work in the future, right? And even how we hire.
Yeah, and I think that's what we saw when we ran our billings and invoicing in March and in April and in May. We hit budget, actually above budget. And so, you know, we were proving to ourselves that this could be done. And, you know, I will say this, that many years ago when somebody approached me about, you know, instituting a more work from home flex schedule, you know, I was definitely the one guy that said that's never going to work in my business. We're too hands-on. We're too much of a collaborative team. I had concerns, and I remember the teacher telling me, says, well, why? And I was like, well, I got some players that will do great with it, and I got some players I worry about. And he was very pointed, says, well, the ones you're worried about, are they A players? I kind of giggled, and he goes, well, if they're not A players, why'd you hire them? And, it really makes you get back to the point of when you're hiring, if you hire A players, they're gonna do it. They're gonna knock it out of the park. And if you hire A players and let them run, they're gonna do you great. And I think so. As my mantra is, I'm trying to get better at it, is hire slow, fire fast, and get that A player and let them run and give them the rope to run. And there's tons of rock stars out there. You just got to be willing to be patient.
I think that's great, and people love in work, right? We know people like flexibility, they like autonomy, and if you have good people, you can let them run with that. I think that's great. Thank you. Susan, can you talk to us about some of your adaptations? I know you guys have done a lot.
Yeah, I think some of the things that we did obviously was change the technology that we did have. I mean, we always wanted to do some of the things that we did, and so we just made it happen a lot quicker than what we had anticipated. This won't be the end technology. We are searching for better solutions, but definitely we'll continue to keep that. We want to do, we did online, we did mobile, we did it through social media. Another thing that we did is we actually had one reach out to us. We thought, oh, this is a good idea. So it's the larger communities that had a really active social presence within their own communities. We set up a once a week delivery to those particular communities. And so the customer would put their order in, and then we'd gather it all up, take it in one fell swoop out to that community, deliver it to each person, and they would get that weekly grocery delivery. I think another thing that, yeah, Sarah wants us to.
It's really creative. It's great.
Some other things that we did was really look at our team and how some of the areas worked. And we did change up how some of the work was parsed out. In fact, our marketing director really became our IT director because she had to. So some of those roles had to change. But I would also say that what we have noticed over the past, 2-3 months, is that when the pandemic really hit, everyone stayed home. Nobody came in to shop. And as we have reopened, I think it's just more of a cultural thing. We are people. We want to be next to people. And so our online orders have dropped significantly. Whereas before before COVID, we were probably at like a 90-10 with foot traffic. And then during COVID, we were 10% foot and 90% online. Now we're probably back to like a 75-25. People are wanting to come out. We always have said that we're more of an experience, because what you can do here is get a lot of different things. We try not to do grocery store type of products, but we are seeing people come back out and enjoy shopping, enjoy mingling with other people. So I think it just speaks to us as human beings. We want that human touch, and while we're willing to do the virtual, and I think it's great. I think from a work standpoint, I think people want to be more virtual, but when it comes to social, they want to reach out and touch somebody. And so it's nice that we're able to adapt and kind of be there for both of those types of environments.
That's nice. And hybrid, I think, is key, right? Being able to to adapt to both. Speaking of the touching, what are you guys doing for safety? So as far as social distancing and safety, and kind of going forward, as there's a predictive wave in the future. What are you guys doing now, Susan?
So we all wear masks. We used to wear gloves. It has now been recommended don't wear gloves. We preach a lot, go wash your hands, but I say we haven't changed a tremendous amount because we do deal with food. So we should be clean. We should have a lot of these safety measures already in place. We do wash our door handles and our shopping buggy handles a lot more frequently than we did, but we're always wiping surfaces. One of the things that we haven't done that you will see in many of the industries, and whether they have to or not, they just did, we did not put up the plexiglass. And I think maybe once our masks go away, we might then go to the plexiglass. To me, it takes away a little bit from the customer service. You feel like you have a barrier. Whenever I go somewhere and I have that plexiglass and I'm face to face with, I feel like I'm separate from that person. And I don't want my customer to feel like we're not personable. So I think that that is a personal struggle for me, is the whole plexiglass. So it's a thing that I'll have to just make a decision on once the masks go away.
When you have a really personal business, right? You always talk about how you greet every customer as they come in, and so I know that that's challenging, right? Howard, have you guys seen any changes as far as your kind of social distancing, especially as you're interacting out in the field with customers?
Yeah, I think the big thing we've done on the design side is still try to do almost all of our client meetings virtually. If they come in, we have some cleaning protocols. We try to keep them sort of isolated from staff, move them from room to room, and clean it as they leave. As far as the field staff, when they're out in the field, we right out of the gate started reaching out to our clients and saying, okay, listen, we got to do this not face to face, even when they're in the field. Here's their cell numbers. Here's these people's cell numbers. Let's text. Let's phone call. So if you need to ask our field guys to do something while they're there, we need to do it by the phone. Don't where historically they would just drive over in their truck and say, hey, while you're here, can you do this? So we're trying to educate them also that just, hey, we just need to be smart. And sort of educate our staff that said, hey, if you got somebody comes rolling up on you, you got to, try to be nice and just say, hey, heads up, stop, and that if they continue to encroach in your space, you have all rights to get in your truck and leave. And then we'll call them and we'll have that conversation. Probably not gonna be happy, but we'll get through it. So it's really just an education, like I say, we're used to all being sort of in the mud together. In the field. So I think for the most part, it's just an educational and trying to reach out and educate the client before you get to the site. Here's what we expect. Please share that with your team.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really easy for us to talk about some of the challenges, right? And the issues. Have you guys seen any good stuff? Has there been anything that you will carry into your business moving forward, like a silver lining from this? Either. Susan, I guess we'll start with you.
I think there's a lot of silver linings. Number one is you can get through anything. Really, as long as you're open to change, as long as you're willing to be flexible and look at things completely different than how you have, then you can do it. I think that it's made me more fearless. Like I feel that I can grow my business. And sure, it's scary sometimes to just step out there, but you see fellow business owners who have succeeded, and you see fellow business owners who are struggling a little bit, and you look at their business and go, why are they struggling? And you can see, oh, they're not as open to that change. And so if you're willing to embrace that and take advantage, I should have looked this up, but you really shouldn't ever let a crisis go wasted. Take advantage of it. Some of the changes that we made that I probably wouldn't have if the pandemic hadn't happened, we reduced our store hours. So we've shaved 2 hours off of our day. 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour at nighttime. It helps reduce some costs. We got rid of a breakfast. We used to serve breakfast. We worked really hard for 2 years. It wasn't that it was a failure, but we worked hard at it. And I think the silver lining for us was, you know what? We're working really hard for this. It hasn't grown in 2 years. You know what? Let's go find something different that's going to make more revenue and take less work And it's better. So I think as a business owner, sometimes you just get in a rut and let's just keep doing it. People still like it. But if you're working really hard at it and it's not really generating that much, you should try something different. So I think for us, the silver lining is more of a mindset. You know what? Change how you do things. And it was really all about the change.
I think that's great. I mean, business owners, you have to be adaptable, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to be open to change, and even your diversity, right, through this time really allowed you to adapt really well. And I think that's really incredible. So thank you. Howard, how about you? Is there a silver lining in this?
Yeah, I think, it's always easy to say no. And, that was not an option with knowing that we had to get our staff out of the office. And so, continuing to broaden our thought process to find out what's available, and letting the staff dictate what they were comfortable with, not only from a work hours, but a workflow, what type of program, whether it be Zoom, whether it be Microsoft Teams, letting those guys that are the ones dealing with it day in, day out, make some of those decisions. I think it was also very empowering to them because all of a sudden they felt like they had a seat at the table. Whereas in the past, maybe they were sitting there going, I'm just, I'm over here making the coffee. It's time to go make the coffee, where, now I think they feel a little more invested. And they also, I think from a management side, it's allowed us to say, okay, yeah, we do have A players. Let's continue to give them that reign or give them that run, to let them show us where some other new things are. So I think that's the biggest thing, is just continuing to open our mind to the possibilities. And as Susan said, is that no matter what, we know we'll pivot and figure out what it is, but it's not necessarily got to be a direction or a decision or dictated from on high. It can be a team decision. Let's figure it out together.
That's great. And that's great leadership style too, to include your team. I'm going to move into my final question. So if people want to start sending in there to the Q&A, sending questions, we'll open that up in a minute. My final question is really actually pretty related to the last one, but especially since we have a lot of students on here and maybe some other small business owners, do you have any kind of lessons learned or tips in addition to what you've already given for some of these students listening that might be starting their own business? Either.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Howard, let's start with you.
As I'll say, I'll jump forward here on this one. I think the biggest thing is the flexibility. I'm a planner by nature. Every little detail I want to think out. I want a checklist. I want a flow chart. I am an engineer, or as we like to say, an engineer. But at the end of the day, I think you have to be flexible and know that it's good to have a plan, but you got to be flexible to know that plan can detour at any moment. If you get too rigid, that it can lock you up very quickly. And by the time you realize that you're stuck in a direction, there may not be a recovery. So I think the key is always be flexible, always be learning. Listen, read, podcast, whatever it is, other business owners' ideas, even though, for instance, me and Susan have vastly different business. She's in the retail person-to-person market, where I'm more on the development side. At the end of the day, being a business owner really comes down to a lot of the same qualities, and that's knowing your client, knowing your staff, and knowing your market. And I think one of the things that I would stress to the population that we're talking to is know your strengths, play to your strengths. Like Susan alluded to with her breakfast, sometimes we get trying to do a very shotgun approach of all these different markets, and we lose sight of what we're good at. So there's a lot more money to be made and a lot more happiness to be made on the staff level if you're doing what you do every day and you do great at it, versus trying to get over here and trying to get into a sector or something that maybe not your wheelhouse. You can spend a lot of time and effort trying to figure that out, while this one right here is your pony. And what I mean by that is, I think the market, I don't remember exactly the numbers, but it's easier to grow an existing client's business with you than go out and recruit that same amount of money. In other words, if I can grow an existing client by 100,000, that is a lot less effort than me going and finding a brand new client and spending 2 or 3 years to develop a $100,000 contract. So, I would say figure out your strengths and stay at it.
Great, thank you. It's great advice. Susan?
I'm going to give you an example.
Okay.
So there's another small business owner here that we do business together. And during COVID, I didn't have time for her product. But we still stay in touch. And so toward the end, it came to Mother's Day. And I had need of her product. I said, hey, do you have some product? Ooh, no, because of COVID, I have been really busy and all the wholesalers want my product, blah, blah. And I, oh, that's fantastic. Go for that. You know, get the biggest bang for your buck. So just saw her. And I said, how's your business going? How's it doing? So she tells me she has this huge opportunity. And she said, so it's flowers. And so she has an opportunity to provide 100 bouquets a week. Never had to do that before. What? Oh, I'm a little nervous about that. I said, all right. Oh, I think I'm just going to tell them, I think let's start with 40. Let's just see how that goes. But don't do it. Go for the 100. I said, I don't care if you don't have enough flowers. Go figure out how to source those flowers. You go put those bouquets together. If you need help, you let me know. I will help you. But you do it. Don't say no. This is going to jumpstart your business, and this will take your business to where you want to go. I know it's scary, and I know you don't have all the answers right now, but just go for it. She texted me that afternoon.
That's awesome.
You have to be fearless. You have to take advantage of those opportunities. Even when your business isn't ready for it, you just got to do it. Because that's what's going to make your business succeed. And then it prepares you for that next time, that next big opportunity comes. Like, I think of my business, I was so happy for that first $20. Then I was happy for my next $100. And now we look back and there's certain holidays and we go, oh, remember when we got $20 for that? We were so excited. I think of king cakes. We were so excited when we sold like 5 in a day. So now we're excited when we sell 20 in a day. And so I look forward to that time when I can sell 100 a day, you know, and you just keep going forward.
I love that. I love your hustling spirit. I just love it anyways. I always love having you in the classroom because I think that's such a good thing for students to learn, right? In business, so a lot of times you need to say yes, right? There are times to say no, but most of the time you need to go for it, right? So I think that's great advice. Thank you. Okay, I guess we're going to open it up for questions. Does anybody have any questions from the audience?
I see one from chat. I can answer that one. You see the chat one?
Okay, Jeff, I might need to
It
step
says,
in here. I'm not seeing any.
It says,
actually.
for small business owners, without getting into too many specifics, have either been able to or know other businesses that have accessed the Paycheck Protection Program offered by the federal government, and how has that helped? So I can speak to that. I don't know, Howard, if you can, but I did take advantage of it because there's a lot of economic uncertainty out there. And so that was part of that program. And I will tell you from my perspective, the only way I got it, I think, is because I had a personal relationship with my banker. If I did not have a relationship with a local banker, I think I would have fallen through the cracks, because I've talked to some of my other local businesses that I do business with, and they go, I haven't heard anything. I haven't heard anything. And they didn't get any of those programs. They may have now, but in that initial first phase, they didn't. And I said, well, what bank do you go? And it was one of those big national banks. So I would also encourage, when you're a local small business, start with a local small bank and establish that relationship with that banker. It has helped me with getting loans. It has helped me with looking at SBA opportunities. So that was a huge win, and a big learning point for me was make sure you have that relationship.
I think that's a great point. That's kind of happened across the country, right? That we've seen that actually people have been able to get the loans actually a lot easier from small banks than large banks. This was actually an interesting phenomenon. So I think that's a great advice, right? Those networks and connections with loans too. Howard, did you have any experience with this?
I did. We accessed it, and much like what Susan was saying, we found it easy. We actually were one of the very, very first ones funded. I think we received everything like on April 9th. The big thing was, in our business, we felt it very strong in the Great Depression, recession, whatever they call it, in 07, 08. We were 25 employees, went down to 3, and we're bailing water as fast as we could. So I smelt the same thing. We were very close to shutting down or laying off a large part of our company, even though I had plenty of work. I knew by laying people off, I could elongate that backlog. My big fear was whether or not clients would continue paying. Would they have access to capital? So we did access it. To what Susan said, I think that the reason ours was so easy was that we had a long-term relationship with a local bank. That started out as a very local bank and now has grown into one of the regional banks. But, not to knock big banks, but I think you have to stay local for those personal relationships so they help guide you. The second reason I think we got it was my finance director, AKA my wife. She, the whole time they were changing the rules daily. I don't call them rules. They were changing guidance daily. And so when we looked through all the application information, had all these things that were optional, and I'm like, don't worry about doing those optionals. Just get it turned in. Just get it turned in. Get in line. Get in line. And she's like, no, I'm going to take the time to do this and do it right. And she did. And then the second piece of the puzzle was Todd Anduzzi with Small Business Development Center out of West Georgia. He said, we're like, we can't get on the SBA website. And he goes, get on it at 2 a.m. Friday night. Guess what? We got on at 2 a.m. Friday night. By 3 o'clock, we were inputting all of our data. By Saturday night, we had been told that we had everything in. By Sunday afternoon, basically told we had been approved. And by Thursday, Friday, we had money in the bank. So, to me, it was more of a comfort level. We've been lucky enough not to see the drawdown in cash from our clients. So we haven't used a whole lot of it, but it gave me that security blanket that I didn't need to get ahead of it. Because 07, 08, 09 really had the opportunity to put us out of business because we had all these large contracts that were rocking and rolling. Right. And so I have a signed contract, but if the bank don't pay my client, the client don't pay me. And so, I was really gun shy, even though I had all this stuff on the books is, well, if the banks quit paying them, it don't matter what kind of contract I got, we all going out of business. So I was really close to trying to figure out, I'd already sat down and started looking at, okay, who's gone, who's staying, in first wave, second wave, third wave, if this goes on and on and on. And so by tapping that, it allowed me to step back and say, okay, time out. Let's figure out how we utilize our staff in the best ways. Where's my biggest workload right now? How do I shift talent to other areas to hammer that workload and let the other side maybe create more of a backlog? So it was more of a comfort thing. I heard a lot of horror stories from a lot of small businesses that were getting rejected. And I think a lot of it was because as time went on, as you see even today, the rules and the guidance is continuing to change. I think it was Sunday they came out with a new forgiveness guidance. Well, that don't mean the next week we're not getting another one. So the banks don't really know how to handle it either. But, the key is you got to be prepared and do what it takes to get in line.
Briana, if you don't mind, let me just kind of tie a kind of a fun little loop. With the program, it was very, so Howard has a finance director, his wife. Susan is her finance director. As a small business owner, you wear many, many hats.
Yes.
And it was scary trying to figure out how in the world do I do it. So because I am a chamber member, because I have attended classes, because I have involved myself in some things that the chamber offers, it was able to get me in touch with Todd Anduzzi, who is the West Georgia Small Business Development Center, who Howard also referenced. So this is just another point of where your network, your chamber, use your resources around you to help you in your business. Because if you try to do it alone, it's really hard. Doesn't mean you can't do it, but it makes it a little bit easier if you use the resources around you.
Yes, completely. And I love that. I love having Sarah on the call too, as far as, right, these resources that are available to you. We have more resources than we've ever had before, right? All these conferences and webinars that are free, right, that would never normally be free. So the opportunity to learn, right, is the highest it probably will ever be. So I think that's really an amazing, it's almost overwhelming, right, how many resources there are. And I think it's important for companies to take advantage of those. Okay, let's see. I think we have time for one more question. So, okay. Let's go with this one. So what is your plan for the fall? If this is going to come back in a second wave, is there anything you would do differently?
I might cry this time if it happens. I didn't have time to cry in the spring.
Right.
I might cry in the fall. I'll go more online. I'll be better prepared to be online in the fall.
Yeah, in the meantime, are you going to be looking for kind of more integrated systems, things like that?
I already
or-
had
yeah.
2 meetings. Yeah, even just this week, I've had a couple of meetings.
Great. Howard?
Yeah, I think for us, it'd be primarily just, going back to what we did before with the design staff, and splitting up the survey. So I think it worked well. I think that I was astonished how well it worked and how many minimal hiccups we had. So I think we're ready. It's just really just trying to stay ahead of it, and move on it and act on it quickly.
And just
Thank you.
as an aside, I'm going to open up a new store for the fall, so I'll have more product to offer our customers because food is a cure for COVID-19.
I'm amazed and impressed.
Yes.
I'm so impressed that you're opening a new store during all this. That's amazing, Susan. Well, you guys have been wonderful. Thank you so much for being with us today. I think this was really helpful to students and inspiring business owners. So thank you very much. And I wish you good wishes for the future. And I hope your new store opening goes well, Susan. And I hope those contracts all come through, Howard. So thank you guys very much.
Thanks,
and thank
Briana.
you, Sarah, for being with us.
Thank you.
Thanks.